The Great Hall of Valeth Prime was older than most stars. Its walls were made of crystal that sang when light touched them. Its floors held the footsteps of beings who had walked between galaxies when humanity's ancestors still lived in caves. Here, the Council of 17 had ruled the known universe for 12,000 years without challenge. Today, they gathered to discuss the newest species to reach the stars. Ambassador Cathrel the Vorax stood at the center of the chamber. His body was made of living metal that shifted and flowed like water. He had served the Council for 3,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species crawl out of their birth worlds and reach for the heavens. Most of them were disappointing. These humans were no different. "They call their world Earth," Cathrel said. His voice echoed through the crystal hall. "A small planet orbiting a yellow star at the edge of the outer rim. They achieved faster than light. Travel approximately 200 years ago by their counting. Their probe reached our border station's last cycle." The council members listened in silence. There were 17 of them, each representing one of the elder races. The Vorax, with their metal bodies. The Silith, with their many eyes and ancient minds. The Kethmari, who lived so long that they measured time in millennia. Together, they had built the Galactic Concord and brought order to a chaotic universe. Order meant hierarchy. Every species had its place. "Show us," commanded High Counselor Vethmer of the Silith. Her voice was like wind through dead leaves. Cathrel waved his hand in images, appeared in the air above the chamber. Humans, billions of them, living on their little blue world. Working, building, fighting, dying, always dying. Their lifespan is approximately 100 years, Cathrel continued. They have no natural connection to the quantum substrate. No telepathy. No biological immortality. Their bodies are fragile and prone to disease. They require very specific conditions to survive. Counselor Drethvon of the Morvex leaned forward. "Then why are we discussing them at all?" "Because they breed quickly," Cathrel answered. "They adapt to new environments faster than any species we have recorded. They can survive conditions that would kill more refined races. And there are many of them. 8 billion on their home world alone, with colonies spreading to nearby systems." The council understood immediately. The Concord always needed workers. Species to mine the asteroids, build the stations, maintain the great machines that kept civilization running. The elder races had long ago moved beyond such labor. They had younger, lesser species for that. "Classification?" Vethmer asked. "I recommend Epsilon 7, Cathrel said. "Worker caste. Standard integration protocol." The vote was unanimous. It took less than a minute. 12,000 light-years away, humanity received the transmission 3 months later. It arrived on every screen, every device, every communication system on Earth, and its colonies simultaneously. The Concord wanted to make sure everyone heard. The message was simple. Humanity had been judged. Humanity had been found lacking. Humanity would now serve the greater civilization as a labor species. Integration ships would arrive within 2 years. Resistance was not recommended. Director Amara Okonkwo watched the message from her office in the United Earth Assembly Building in Geneva. She was 63 years old. Her hair was gray, her face lined with years of service. She had led humanity through 3 crises already. This would be the 4th. She called an emergency session of the Assembly. Representatives from every nation, every colony, every human settlement in the solar system connected within the hour. "You have all seen the message," she said. "You know what they want? Now I need to know what we are prepared to do." The debate lasted 6 hours. Some wanted to surrender. The Concord had technology that made humanity look primitive. Fighting them would mean death on a scale no one could imagine. Better to survive as servants than die as free people. Others disagreed. Admiral Chen, Way of the United Earth Defense Force, spoke last. He was 70 years old and had served in 3 different wars before humanity ever left Earth. "They think we are weak because we die," he said. "They look at us and see creatures with short lives, fragile bodies, limited abilities. They see workers, servants, slaves." He paused and looked around the chamber. "But they have made a mistake. They do not understand what it means to be mortal. They do not understand that we have spent our entire existence fighting against time, against nature, against each other. They do not understand that every single thing humanity has ever built, we built knowing that we would not live to see its completion. We build for our children. We fight for our grandchildren. We dream for generations we will never meet. He straightened his old shoulders. The Concorde has existed for 12,000 years. In that time, they have changed nothing. They have built nothing new. They have simply maintained what they already had. We have existed for 200,000 years, and in that time, we have gone from caves to stars. We have done this because we know we are dying. Every day, every hour, we are dying. And that makes us fight harder than any immortal ever could. Director Okonkwo stood. Then we have our answer. The response to the Concorde was broadcast 3 days later. It was much shorter than their message had been. Come and try. On Veloth Prime, Ambassador Kethrel received the human response with confusion. In 3,000 years, he had never seen a species respond to integration with defiance. Fear. Yes. Bargaining. Often. Resignation. Always. But never defiance. He brought the message to the council. They watched it together in the Crystal Hall. Curious, Vethmer said finally. They do not understand their situation. They will learn, Counselor Drethven said. All species learn eventually. Kethrel said nothing. But somewhere in his ancient mind a small doubt had formed. He had studied the human probe that reached their borders. It was crude, primitive, held together with basic engineering and simple determination. But it had worked. Against all odds, against all logic. It had crossed the void between stars and announced humanity's presence to the universe. Perhaps Kethrel thought. The council had underestimated these short-lived creatures. It was a thought he would remember in the years to come. When everything changed, humanity began preparing for war. They had 18 months before the integration fleet arrived. It was not enough time. It would have to be enough. In labs across Earth and its colonies, scientists worked around the clock. In shipyards, workers built vessels designed not for exploration but for battle. In training camps, soldiers prepared for combat against enemies they had never seen. And in the halls of power, Director Okonkwo made a promise. They think they know us, she said. They think they understand what humans are capable of. Let them come. Let them see what a species does when it has nothing to lose but its freedom. The stars waited. The Concorde prepared its fleet. And humanity, small and mortal and stubborn, fused to kneel. The game was about to change forever. Admiral Sitheks of the Kethmari had lived for 9,000 years. In that time, he had commanded the integration fleet through 47 successful operations. 47 species brought into the Concorde. 47 worlds that learned their place in the natural order of things he expected humanity to be. Number 40-8. His fleet was magnificent. 300 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet. His flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was larger than some moons. It carried weapons that could crack continents and shields that could withstand the heat of a star. Against this, humanity had perhaps 50 ships, small things built in a hurry, crewed by creatures who would die of old age before Sitheks finished his morning meditation. Begin standard approach, Sitheks commanded as his fleet entered the human solar system. Destroy their orbital defenses first, then we will proceed to the surface. The first wave of Concorde fighters launched from the fleet, 2,000 of them, each one piloted by soldiers with centuries of combat experience. They moved in perfect formation toward the human defensive line. What happened next confused Sitheks. The human ships did not retreat. They did not attempt to negotiate. They did not even try to establish a defensive formation. They attacked Lieutenant. Commander Yuki Tanaka led the first squadron. She was 34 years old. She had been flying for 12 years. She knew that her ship was smaller, weaker, and less advanced than anything the Concorde had. She also knew something the Concorde did not. She was not afraid to die. All ships, she said, through her communication system, remember what we're fighting for. Not for ourselves. For everyone who comes after us? For every human child who will never know what it means to be a slave, make them hurt. Her squadron hit the Concorde formation like a hammer. Human ships were faster than the enemy expected, more agile. They weaved through the Concorde fighters, striking and vanishing before the larger ships could respond. More importantly, human pilots fought differently. The Concorde pilots were careful. They protected themselves. They had centuries of life ahead of them and did not want to throw it away in a single battle. They fought to survive. Human pilots fought to win. In the first hour, Tanaka's squadron destroyed 60 Concorde fighters. They lost 8 of their own ships. But every human pilot who died took enemies with them. Some rammed their damaged ships into Concorde vessels. Others detonated their reactors at point-blank range. They traded their lives for kills without hesitation. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Scythex watched the battle with growing concern. "They are not behaving correctly," he said to his officers. "Why do they not retreat?" "They are primitives," one officer answered. "They do not understand the mathematics of battle." But Scythex had lived for 9,000 years. He had seen many things, and he was beginning to understand that this was something new. The humans were not fighting to survive. They were fighting because they genuinely believed they could win. And because of that belief, they were willing to pay any price. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka had lost 11 of her 12 pilots by the third hour. Her own ship was damaged, leaking atmosphere, its weapons barely functioning. She had 2 choices: retreat to Earth and live, or push forward and probably die. She pushed forward. Targeting the flagship, she reported, "I'm going for the command deck." "Tanaka, you will not survive that approach," Control responded. "I know." Her ship accelerated toward the Eternal Dominion. Point defense systems tracked her, firing bursts of energy that would vaporize any vessel. She dodged through the fire with skills born from a lifetime of training, compressed into a few short decades. She made it halfway to the flagship before her ship took a direct hit. The left side exploded. Her navigation systems failed. She was flying blind now, guided only by memory and instinct. "I can see their bridge," she said, her voice calm. "I can see them watching me." On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Scythex stood at the observation window. He saw the human ship coming, trailing fire and debris. He saw that it would reach them before his weapons could stop it, for the first time in 9,000 years. He felt something he barely recognized: fear. "All hands brace for impact," he commanded. Tanaka's last transmission was picked up by every human ship in the system. It spread across Earth within minutes. It became words that humanity would remember forever. "You have forever. We have today. Make yours count." Her ship hit the Eternal Dominion's bridge section. The reactor detonated inside the command deck. Admiral Scythex died instantly, along with 30 senior officers. The integration fleet lost its commander. Its communications fell into chaos. And humanity, seeing the flagship burning, pushed their attack even harder. The battle lasted 2 more days. The Concorde lost 60 ships before they finally retreated. They had never lost 60 ships in a single engagement. They had never lost a fleet admiral in combat. They had never been beaten by a species they classified as primitive, on Veloth Prime. The Council of 17 received the news in stunned silence. "This is not possible," Counselor Drethvon said. "They are nothing. They are workers. They are Epsilon 7. Ambassador Cathrell studied the battle reports carefully. He watched recordings of human pilots flying into certain death. He saw their final transmissions, their messages to families they would never see again. Their last words about freedom and children and the future. "They do not fight like Epsilon 7, he said quietly. "They fight like something else entirely." "Like what?" Vethmer demanded. Cathrall considered his answer for a long moment. "Like creatures who have nothing to lose. We have our immortality to protect. They have only their brief moment in the universe, and they are willing to spend that moment fighting us." The council debated for hours. Some wanted to send a larger fleet. Others suggested using weapons capable of destroying planets. A few even proposed negotiation, but all of them were afraid, because the humans had shown them. something they had forgotten in 12,000 years of easy dominance. They had shown them that power was not enough. Technology was not enough. Even immortality was not enough. Against an enemy who did not fear death, even the mightiest empire was vulnerable. On Earth, humanity mourned its dead and prepared for the next battle. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka was given a hero's memorial. Her words were carved into monuments across the planet, but there was no time for long grief. The Concorde would return, and humanity needed to be ready. Director Okonkwo addressed the planet in a broadcast seen by billions. "We have won the first battle," she said, "but this war is just beginning. They will come back with more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. They think time is on their side. They think they can wait us out, outlive us, wear us down." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "They are wrong. Every generation will fight. Every generation will sacrifice. Every generation will pass the torch to the next. We are not fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for every human who will ever live. And that is something the Concorde will never understand." In the darkness between stars, the remnants of the integration fleet limped home. They carried with them stories of human pilots who laughed as they died, who sang songs into their final moments, who refused to surrender even when surrender was the only logical choice. The Concorde had ruled the galaxy. For 12,000 years, for the first time, they wondered if those years were coming to an end. The Concorde changed their approach. If humans could not be conquered through direct battle, they would be destroyed through isolation. A blockade of 500 ships surrounded the Sol system, cutting humanity off from the rest of the galaxy. No trade, no communication, no contact with other species. The humans would be trapped in their little corner of space, till hunger and desperation broke their will. High Counselor Vethmer believed it would take less than a decade. She was wrong on Earth. Director Okonkwo gathered the greatest minds humanity had to offer: scientists, engineers, physicists, biologists. They met in an underground facility in the Swiss Alps, far from any sensors the Concorde might use to watch them. "We are alone," Okonkwo said. "The galaxy has abandoned us. The Concorde believes this will make us weak. We are going to prove them wrong." She called it the Prometheus Initiative. The goal was simple: take everything humanity had captured from the Concorde, figure out how it worked, then make it better. Dr. Marcus Chen led the physics team. He was 58 years old and had been diagnosed with cancer 6 months earlier. The doctors gave him 2 years, maybe 3. He planned to use every minute of it. "The Concorde has technology we cannot even begin to understand," he told his team on the first day. "They access something called the quantum substrate. It is the foundation of their faster-than-light travel, their shields, their weapons. They manipulate it naturally, through biological organs evolved over millions of years." He put his hands on the table and leaned forward. "Oh, we do not have those organs. We cannot evolve them, so we're going to build them instead." His team thought he was crazy. The quantum substrate was beyond human science. Their instruments could barely detect it. Building a machine to manipulate it was like asking ancient humans to build a computer. But Marcus Chen had something the Concorde scientists did not. He had a deadline. He had a clock counting down inside his own body, reminding him every day that time was running out. He worked 20 hours a day. He slept on a cot in his laboratory. He watched recordings of Concorde technology until he could see the patterns in his dreams. 3 years into the blockade, he made a breakthrough. "The substrate is not magic," he announced to Director Okonkwo. "It is physics. Complex physics, yes. Physics we do not fully understand, but physics nonetheless, and anything that follows rules can be manipulated." He showed her the prototype. It was ugly. It filled an entire room. It required 3 nuclear reactors to power. It gave headaches to anyone who stood too close. But when Marcus Chen activated it, the machine reached out and touched the quantum substrate for the first time in history. Humanity had done something the elder races believed impossible. Okonkwo stared at the machine. "Can you make it smaller?" "With time, we do not have much time." Marcus smiled, and there was something fierce in his dying eyes. Then we will work faster. The Prometheus Initiative spread across human space. In secret labs on Earth, on Mars, on stations hidden in the asteroid belt, scientists pushed the boundaries of physics. They reverse-engineered Concorde weapons. They built their own faster-than-light drives. They created shields that could stop enemy fire. Everything took too long. Everything cost too much. Everything was imperfect. Held together with determination and desperation, everything worked anyway. 4 years into the blockade, the first human stealth ship slipped through the Concorde's lines. It was small, barely visible to sensors, powered by a quantum drive that Marcus Chen had built with his own hands before his death 6 months earlier. The ship carried Captain Elena Vasquez and a crew of 7. Their mission was to make contact with other species in the galaxy. Species that might be willing to help, because humanity had realized something important. The Concorde called 17 species the Elder Races. But there were hundreds of other species in the galaxy. Species that had been classified and controlled, just like humanity was supposed to be. Species that might be tired of serving. Captain Vasquez found the Velkith first. They were engineers, their bodies adapted for building and repairing the great machines of the Concorde. For 8,000 years, they had maintained the Empire's infrastructure. They had never been thanked. They had never been promoted. They had never been given any hope that their status might change. The Velkith listened to Vasquez's story. They watched recordings of human pilots dying to protect their world. They heard about Lieutenant Commander Tanaka and her final words. Then they made a decision. "We will help you," their leader said. "Not because we believe you can win, but because you have shown us something we had forgotten." "What is that?" Vasquez asked. "That it is possible to fight." The Velkith were first. But they were not last. The Dreth joined next, a species of warriors who had been reduced to serving as guards and enforcers. Then the Morvani biologists, who had been forced to work on projects they found morally wrong. Then dozens more, each one a species that had been told their place in the universe was fixed, that they would never be more than servants. Humanity offered them something different. Not promises of victory. Not guarantees of safety. Just a simple idea. The universe could change. The old order could fall. And species that had been nothing could become something more. On Veloth Prime, the Council of 17 began to receive disturbing reports. "The Velkith are refusing to maintain our stations in the outer sectors," Ambassador Kethril informed them. "The Dreth are deserting their posts. The Morvani have stopped sending their tribute. Crush them," Councillor Drethvon demanded. "Send the fleet." "Which fleet?" Kethril asked quietly. "We have ships blockading the humans. We have ships maintaining order in 100 sectors. We do not have enough ships to be everywhere at once." "Then we will make them an example. Destroy the Velkith homeworld. That would take resources we cannot spare, and it might push more species to rebel." The council fell silent. For 12,000 years they had maintained control through overwhelming power. No one had dared challenge them because no one had believed. Challenge was possible. Now that belief was cracking because of humans. Because of short-lived, fragile creatures who should have surrendered and served. Creatures who had looked at the mightiest empire in the galaxy and said, "Come and try." The darkness between stars, the rebellion grew. Species that had never spoken to each other now shared information, resources, and hope. And at the center of it all, still blockaded, but no longer alone, humanity continued to build. They built ships. They built weapons. They built alliances. And they built something the Concorde could not destroy. They built the idea that the old order was not permanent. That power could be challenged. That even the smallest species could change the galaxy. Director Okonkwo, now 70 years old, addressed the secret assembly of rebel species. "They called us weak," she said. "They said our short lives made us inferior. But look at what we have done in 10 years. Look at what you have done by standing with us. The Concorde has ruled for 12,000 years. In 12,000 years, nothing changed. We have been fighting for 1 decade, and already the galaxy is different." She looked around at the gathered representatives, at beings who would have been strangers 10 years ago, but were now allies. They have eternity. We have purpose, and purpose is stronger. The rebellion was ready. The final battle was approaching, and humanity mortal and stubborn and unbroken, prepared to show the galaxy what they could really do. The Council of 17 had never received visitors like this before for 12,000 years. Species came to Veloth Prime as petitioners, begging for mercy or favor. They came with their heads bowed and their spirits broken. They came knowing their place. The humans came as equals. Director Amara Okonkwo walked into the Crystal Hall with her back straight and her eyes forward. She was 73 now. Her hair was white, her face deeply lined, her body worn by decades of war and worry. The council looked at her and saw weakness, saw decay, saw a creature approaching the end of her brief existence. They did not see what she saw when she looked in the mirror. A woman who had outlived their expectations by 10 years and intended to outlive them by more. Behind her walked Admiral James Adebayo, her chosen successor. He was 42, young by human standards, but already gray at the temples. The war had aged everyone. You requested this meeting, High Counselor Vethmer said. Her many eyes studied Okonkwo with ancient patience. Speak. Okonkwo took her time. She looked around the Crystal Hall at the 17 thrones, at the beings who had ruled the galaxy since before humanity discovered fire. 10 years ago, she said, you sent us a message. You told us we had been judged. You told us we would serve. You told us resistance was not recommended. She paused. We resisted anyway. You delayed. Drethvon corrected. You have not won. You hide behind your blockade, supported by traitor species who will be punished when this is over. Your rebellion is temporary. Your species is doomed. Okonkwo smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Let me tell you what I see when I look at this council. I see beings who have lived for thousands of years. I see technology that makes ours look primitive. I see an empire that has dominated the galaxy since before my ancestors learned to write. She stepped forward, and the council shifted uneasily. I also see fear. We do not fear you, Vethmer said. Then why did you agree to this meeting? 10 years ago, you would have laughed at the idea of negotiating with us. Now you are desperate enough to let me stand in your sacred hall and speak to you as an equal. She clasped her hands behind her back. You realized you cannot beat us with force. Your fleet at our borders has lost 100 ships to our attacks. Your economy is suffering because the species who do your work are refusing to cooperate. Your empire is cracking, and you do not know how to stop it. We can still destroy you, Drethvon said. We have weapons that can shatter your planet. Then use them. The words hung in the air. The council stared at her. Use them. Okonkwo repeated. Destroy Earth. Kill every human in the Sol system. It will not matter. We have colonies the Concord has never found. We have allies who will continue the fight. We have spread ourselves across the galaxy like seeds, and you cannot find all of us. She took another step forward. But more importantly, if you destroy us, you prove everything we have been saying about you. You prove that the Concord rules through fear and violence, not through right or reason. You prove that every species under your control is a slave, not a citizen. And you guarantee that the rebellion will never stop.
Vethmer's.
Many eyes narrowed. What do you want? I want you to understand something. Something your 12,000 years of dominance have made you forget. Okonkwo turned to face each throne in turn. You call yourselves the elder races. You think your long lives make you superior. But I have studied your history. In 12,000 years, you have built nothing new. You have created nothing original. You have simply maintained what you already had. She pointed at the crystal walls. This hall is 8,000 years old. Your ships use the same designs they used 5,000 years ago. Your science has not advanced in millennia. You have stopped growing. We have perfected ourselves, Kethral said quietly. You have frozen yourselves. And do you know why? She leaned forward, because you are afraid to die. Your immortality is not your strength. It is your cage. You have so much to lose that you cannot risk anything. You cannot innovate because innovation means failure, and failure might mean death. You cannot take chances because every chance might be your last. She straightened. We are different. Every human knows they will die. Every human lives with a clock, counting down. And that makes us do something you have forgotten how to do. Vethmer asked. We try. We fail. We learn. We grow. In 200 years, we went from horses to starships. In 200 years, we crossed the gap that took you millions of years to cross. Because we did not have time to be careful. We did not have time to be perfect. We only had time to be brave. Admiral Adebayo stepped forward. Director, they understand. Give them the offer. Okonkwo nodded. Here is what we propose. The Concord as you know it ends. The hierarchy of races ends. Every species becomes equal, with equal voice and equal rights. The Council of 17 becomes the Council of all. Possible, Drethvin said. 6 months ago I would have agreed with you. But 6 months ago, Ambassador Kethril came to one of our hidden colonies. He came alone, unarmed, seeking to understand. She turned to face Kethril. The living metal being had not moved during the entire meeting. Tell them what you found, Okonkwo said. Kethril was silent for a long moment. Then, he rose from his throne. I have lived for 3,000 years, he said. I have served the Council faithfully. I have believed in our superiority. But I spent 6 months among the humans. I watched them live. I watched them love. I watched them die. His metal body shifted, flowing into new shapes. They know their time is limited. And because of that, every moment matters to them. Every choice matters. Every action matters. They pack more life into a single century than we experience in a millennium. He looked at his fellow counselors. We have forgotten how to live. We exist. We maintain. We endure, but we do not truly live. These creatures, these brief mayflies, they have something we have lost. What? Vethmer asked. Purpose. The word echoed through the crystal hall. Okonkwo spoke again. We are not asking you to surrender. We are asking you to change, to grow, to become part of something new instead of clinging to something old.
Oh.
She met Vethmer's many eyes. You have 6 months to decide. After that, we break your blockade. After that, the rebellion attacks your core worlds. After that, your empire falls whether you want it to or not. She turned to leave, then paused. You have ruled for 12,000 years? You could rule for 12,000 more if you are willing to share power. If you are willing to learn from species you once called inferior, if you are willing to remember what it means to truly live. She walked out of the crystal hall, Admiral Adebayo at her side. Behind her, the Council of 17 sat in silence. They had 6 months. They had weapons that could destroy worlds. They had an empire that had never fallen. But they also had doubt. Doubt that Kethril had planted. Doubt that Okonkwo had nurtured. Doubt that was spreading through the crystal hall like a crack in ancient glass. The universe was changing, and for the first time in 12,000 years, the Council of 17 did not know what to do. The Concord did not fall in a single day. It crumbled over months, like an ancient building finally giving way to time. It began with the Valkith. They had been the first to ally with humanity, and they were the first to openly declare independence. Their homeworld was small, their population limited, but they maintained the machines that kept the Concord running. When they stopped working, things began to break. The Dreth followed. Then the Morvani. Then the Silith, the Korax, the Vendom, and dozens of others. Species that had served in silence for thousands of years suddenly found their voices. The Council of 17 debated. They argued. They threatened, but they did not fight, because Ambassador Kethril had spoken truth in the Crystal Hall. Because the counselors looked at their perfect immortal lives and realized how empty those lives had become. Because they watched recordings of humans laughing and crying and dying and living, and somewhere in their ancient hearts, they remembered what it meant to care about something. Director Okonkwo did not live to see the final surrender. She died 3 months after her meeting with the council, her heart giving out in her sleep. She was 74 years old, but her successor, James Adebayo, finished what she started. The treaty was signed on Veloth Prime. In the same crystal hall where humanity had once been classified as slaves, Adebayo stood where Okonkwo had stood, facing the same thrones, speaking to the same ancient beings. But everything had changed. The Concord as it was no longer exists, he said. Today, we create something new. Not an empire of masters and servants, but a federation of equals. Every species with a voice. Every species with rights. Every species free to grow, to change, to become something more. Vethmer of the Silith was the first to sign. Her ancient hand trembled as she pressed her mark to the document. We do this not because we were defeated, she said, but because we were shown a better path. The humans taught us that change is not weakness. That growth is not failure. That mortality itself can be a teacher. Kethral was next. His living metal body flowed into a new shape as he signed, one that seemed somehow younger, more vibrant. I have lived for 3,000 years, he said. I intend to live for 3,000 more, but I will live differently now. I will try new things. I will take risks. I will learn what it means to truly be alive. One by one, the councilors signed. One by one, the old order passed away. The new federation was not perfect. Nothing involving so many species could be perfect. There were arguments and disagreements, and sometimes even violence. Old habits did not die easily, and 12,000 years of hierarchy left deep scars. But it worked. Slowly, painfully, it worked. Because at its heart was a simple idea. An idea that humans had carried with them since they first looked up at the stars. That every life mattered. That every moment was precious. That limits were not prisons, but invitations to grow. 50 years after the treaty, a memorial was built on Earth. It stood in Geneva, in the plaza where the United Earth Assembly had once met. It was made of crystal from Veloth Prime, metal from the Vorex homeworld, stone from 100 other planets. At its center was a simple inscription. They had eternity. We had purpose. We won. But there was more carved beneath it. Words that James Adebayo had spoken at the memorial's dedication before his own death at the age of 92. We did not win because we were stronger. We did not win because we were smarter. We won because we understood something the Concord had forgotten, that life is not about lasting forever. It is about meaning something while you last. Ambassador Kethral visited the memorial often in the centuries that followed. He had been the first elder to truly understand the humans, and he had become something of a historian. Recording the events of the Liberation War for future generations, he was there on the 100th anniversary. Standing before the inscription as human children ran and played around him, they were not afraid of him. They had grown up in a galaxy where species were friends, not masters and servants. A young girl stopped beside him. She could not have been more than 8 years old. "What are you looking at?" she asked. Kethral considered the question. "I am remembering," he said. "I am remembering what your ancestors taught mine." "What did they teach you?" He looked down at her. This small creature, who would live barely a century, would grow old and die before Kethral changed in any noticeable way. "They taught us that it is not enough to exist," he said. "They taught us that we must live. They taught us that every moment is a gift, and every gift must be used." The girl thought about this. "That sounds hard." "It is," Kethral agreed. "But it is also wonderful." He watched her run off to join her friends, watched her laughing and playing without any awareness of the history surrounding her. She would grow up in a galaxy that her great-great-grandparents had fought to create. She would never know what it meant to be classified as a slave. She would never understand how close humanity had come to losing everything. And that, Kethral thought, was exactly as it should be. The galaxy was still vast. It was still full of mysteries and dangers and wonders. But it was no longer ruled by fear. It was no longer frozen in place, maintaining an order that had stopped growing millennia ago. It was alive. It was changing. It was becoming something new because of humans, because of short-lived, fragile creatures who had looked at the mightiest empire in history and refused to kneel, creatures who had turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. on 1,000 worlds. Species that had once been slaves, now built and created and dreamed. On 1,000 worlds, the old hierarchy was remembered only as history. A warning about what happened when power forgot its purpose. And on Earth. At the memorial in Geneva, the inscription still stood. They had eternity. We had purpose. We won. But visitors often added their own words, carved into small stones and left at the memorial's base. Messages in 100 languages from 100 species, all saying the same thing in different ways. Thank you. Thank you for teaching us that change is possible. Thank you for showing us that even the smallest can stand against the greatest. Thank you for reminding the galaxy how to live. The stars burned on, as they always had. The universe continued its slow dance through infinity, and somewhere in that vast darkness, humanity kept doing what it had always done, building, creating, hoping, living, not forever, but enough, more than enough.